Hi, good morning everyone. Thank you for inviting me to share today. Thank you, Pastor, and thank you also to my ex-colleague, Siu Li, for arrowing me to come and share with all of you today. She knows that it's a topic that's very dear to my heart, and I will willingly accept any of these invitations to share more. Okay. So, hi, good morning. I'm very glad to be here. I couldn't join you for service because I went for my service this morning. And now I'm here able to share with you. This is part 1. So if you are happy with what you hear today, you can come back for part 2. If you're not happy and you didn't hear enough today, you can also come back for part 2. And the list of questions that you have texted to Pastor, we will try to address that also either today or in part 2. Can we have that? And I like to have an interactive session as well. So feel free, there will be some time for Q&A later, and feel free, we'll really love to hear from you as well. I understand that we do have quite a few Filipinos among us. Is that right? Yeah, I love the Philippines. I love the Filipino people, and very expressive. I've been there a few times, done a few mission trips there. And I understand that dementia is also something that's applicable back in your country as well. Okay, so hope that we can all learn something today. Just a bit about myself. I'm a family physician by training. I'm not a geriatrician, okay, but what I know about dementia is from the 7 years that I spent working in St. Luke's Hospital. Okay, so St. Luke's Hospital is a hospital that sees a lot of elderly patients. And I used to run, together with Siu Li, okay, the dementia care service in the hospital. And we ran an inpatient ward, we ran outpatient services, home care, and even a crisis team that we used to go and find a lot of dementia patients with a lot of very difficult behaviors. And we used to go in and try to stabilize the situations. Okay, so this is really a lot of my sharing comes from my experience at St. Luke's Hospital. And I'm glad to be able to share some of it with you as well. My current role, I work in the polyclinic, which is at Bukit Batok, and I also run the community care teams as part of NUHS, National University Health System. And recently, I got involved in the hospital planning for Tengah New Town, where we're going to build another hospital there. Okay, so happy to chat with you after the service as well. Okay, right, so first up as a warm-up, who knows who is this person? Ronald Reagan. Okay, who is Ronald Reagan? Former president of the United States. Well done. Well, you're quite informed audience. Very good. Very important now as well in this time. We just they just elected another their new president as well. Yeah. And who is this? Margaret Thatcher. Oh, okay. So who is Margaret Thatcher? British Prime Minister. Okay. When did Margaret Thatcher serve as Prime Minister? Okay, 70s, 80s or 90s? 80s. A little bit of the 90s as well. Okay, so in the 80s, yeah. And what do these two people have in common? Dementia. Right, that's why we're talking about dementia today, yeah? Okay, so well done. Okay, so these two very distinguished individuals suffered from dementia later in life. What else do they have in common?
They were all very intelligent people who became demented.
Excellent. So they were very intelligent people, right? Okay, who happened to have dementia later on in life. Anything else? What's their legacy?
He's an actor. He was a former actor.
Yes, he was an actor.
Grocer's daughter.
Wow, well done. Well done. Okay, you're the first person that I've shown this at a few talks. You're the first person that can tell me such detail. Okay. Well done. Okay. how's their legacy? Are they good presidents or not so good presidents? Generally, okay, both of them generally have a good reputation, although for Margaret Thatcher, I think some people would disagree. Okay.
Falkland War is bad.
Okay.
The Falkland War.
Okay, so there were a few controversial things, okay, and we're not going to discuss politics after this anymore. Okay, but generally they did well. Okay, so Ronald Reagan is one of the, in fact, they actually have this rating of good and bad US president, and he is at the above average rating. Okay, and then Margaret Thatcher is actually known to be one of the most influential of the British prime ministers of the 20th century. Okay, so and she was also the longest serving in terms of in the UK. Okay, so good, well done. They both unfortunately lived with dementia in the later years of their lives. But what do we remember them for? Is it for the fact that they had dementia later on in life? Not so much, right? In fact, some of us don't even know that they struggled with dementia, right? They have a good legacy, right? And they live very fulfilling lives, even right to the end. Ronald Reagan lived until 93 years old. Margaret Thatcher, I think, lived until about 87 years old. So very, very fulfilling life, okay? Now, the next question I have to ask, how many of you have experienced living or caring with or caring for someone with dementia? Okay, some experience. Okay, good. Okay, so just about maybe close to half of you actually. So quite a lot of you. Okay, so in Singapore we have reversed the idea of having somebody with dementia in the family. We have created a privilege card, okay, or privilege membership for you, and that's called CARA. Okay, so in Singapore, if you have, this is self-declared, okay, so you can actually sign up for the CARA app, and you just have to self-declare that there's somebody in your family living with dementia, and you get access to privileged resources, okay, at discounted rates. And the good thing about this is that it has taken over the place of the lost person card. Okay, for the dementia patients, sometimes they wander around. If you actually log on to this, you can join a community of people that can look out for dementia patients wandering around in the community. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So is everything okay? It's okay. 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 Good. Okay, now that we're all warmed up, okay, why are we talking about dementia? Dementia is a growing problem. It's also a growing old problem. Okay, so the fact that we are all living longer, which is a good thing, it also comes with its problems. Okay, and part of the problem is that we get older, and dementia is associated with age. Okay, so it is I'll come to the definition later, but in Singapore, we are preparing for this epidemic because we are almost a super aging society, and that we will have a lot of old people and also a lot of people with dementia. Okay, by 2030, we are looking at 100,000. By 2050, we are looking at 240,000, which is even 2.5 times of that of 2030. So we have to prepare ourselves for it, and we have to find a way to bend the curve. Okay, to really reduce the rate of dementia in Singapore, and to give the people living with dementia a good environment also to stay in, okay, that they can live good lives even with the dementia condition. Now, the biggest thing that we have had to deal with in the last 5 years is COVID. And COVID really turned our world upside down. And now that COVID is, hopefully almost over, okay, and now not so many people talk about COVID anymore, we are seeing the lingering effects of COVID. And the question we ask ourselves related to dementia is, how actually has COVID affected this projection of dementia? These projections were actually before COVID. Okay, so how has COVID, with circuit breaker, with a lot of elderly staying in the house for 2 years, and after that don't want to come out of the house anymore, okay, sitting without social interaction, without exercise, without activities, how has that actually affected this projection? I think the answer waits to be known, and probably we might see even new projections soon. Now, talking about COVID, an interesting thing that we found, because in the midst of the epidemic, we were running a dementia service, and people were coming into our clinic, right? So they were coming in and say, hey, my father has dementia, my mother has dementia. What happened was, when circuit breaker happened, we found that a lot of the elderly that went to the park were supposed to wear a mask. And when they didn't wear a mask, what happens in Singapore? You get fined, right? And what happens when you get fined? How much was the fine, by the way? Do you remember? 300. Yes, well done. Okay, so $300. It's quite sizable. Okay, it's quite sizable. And as a result of that, guess what? They all come and see the doctor and then say, can you please diagnose my parents with dementia so that you can send it in and then you can reverse the fine. Right? Yeah. So that's what we did. We took a history, we diagnosed her of dementia, we wrote a nice note, and then they submitted that, and then they reversed the fine. Right? But that also told us that there are actually many people living with symptoms of dementia out there that are not diagnosed and maybe don't want to be diagnosed as well, until something happens, right? Or until there comes a point where actually the diagnosis actually helps with either the care, okay, or be able to bring in more resources to help those with dementia. Okay, so that was an interesting story that we realized, okay, and quite a lot of them were actually coming in during that time to get diagnosed. Now there's a reverse, So it's very interesting. It's almost like a side story, but a lot of the elderly that are now very used to wearing the mask now have almost also forgotten that they don't need to wear the mask anymore, right? So when they go out, you ask them why are they wearing the mask, they'll say, oh, the government asked me to wear the mask. I say, okay, sure. I mean, it's not a bad thing to wear a mask, right? When you're out there, okay. Okay, so what is dementia actually? Okay, so dementia, there are official definitions from the medical side, which I'm not going to bore you with. But basically, it is a deterioration of the brain. Okay, it's a deterioration of the brain. Some people liken it to brain failure. Okay, like it's some form of organ failure. Okay, it's a declining of the brain. And as a result, some of our brain functions, our thinking functions get affected. Okay, most commonly, based on the syndrome, what is affected is memory. Okay, and that is the classic thing that it needs to be included for us to actually call it dementia. Okay, but there are actually other areas of the thinking process that can get affected as well, such as language, okay, such as perception, such as judgment, okay, sense of space. Okay, so sometimes you kind of lose your way around. You don't know how far, how near things are. Sometimes the reasoning gets affected as well. Okay, you think that something is very cheap when it costs $100. Okay, or you think something is very expensive when it costs $2. Okay, so sometimes you can get a little bit confused on the judgment, on the reasoning, on the calculation as well. Okay, so these are different things that that people with dementia have to face, and it's challenging, it's potentially frustrating, and as a result of that, a lot of people with dementia actually express out their frustrations in different ways that they know how to, and that's where we need to really understand them and help them to be able to overcome some of these challenges. Okay, very importantly, for the diagnosis of dementia, we have to kind of justify that there was something that they could do in the past and now they cannot do it anymore. And it's due to the something that happened in the brain. Okay, so something that they could do in the past and now they cannot do anymore. For example, okay, for the Chinese, it might be packing ang pao, okay, where they used to pack the ang pao. And somehow you hear that some of the ang paos are empty. right? Or some of the angpaos suddenly have a lot of money inside, okay? And then you say, hey, why like that, why like that? So that could be some of the signs, okay, of dementia. It could be like going to buy something at the supermarket, okay, where they used to do the marketing, but now they don't do it anymore, okay? Or very classically, it will be cooking, because cooking actually takes a lot of executive function. Okay? It's quite difficult to cook a nice meal. Okay? If you have someone that's a very good cook, you need to first buy the ingredients, which are quite a lot of ingredients. You need to put the right amount of ingredients in. You need to cook it for the right amount of time. And you need to present the dish in a way that is acceptable to many people, right? So this actually is quite complicated, yeah? And sometimes people with dementia will start missing out some steps, they'll miss out some ingredients, and then the food just won't taste the same. And then what happens very often is that they would just stop cooking. Right? So in an Asian context, what do? Do we declare out that, hey, you know, this thing is wrong, you know, I'm very frustrated? No, actually in the Asian context, quite often what we find is they withdraw. So they stop doing it and they might not tell you why. Okay, so this is one of the things that, you know, when we are out with our friends, our relatives, we keep a lookout for some of these things, because this could be some of the earlier signs of something happening, okay, earlier signs of dementia occurring, all right? Right, so somebody shows signs of forgetting and you want to get them to be assessed by a healthcare professional. Where do you go? Right, so now there's more and more training in dementia for GPs, for polyclinics. There are certain clinics that are actually available to actually diagnose dementia. And what happens is that we would first ask a series of questions. We would do a physical examination, and then we would do a IQ test. Okay, or a cognitive test, neurocognitive test is called different names. And basically, we want to see the different domains, okay, of the thinking. Okay, it's a way that we test the different domains of thinking. We test things like orientation, we test things like drawing a clock, and then showing the time. We test your short-term memory, executive function, your ability to speak, to recall, even naming some objects, okay, common objects. And we test something in abstraction. That means just imagine something, how will you respond? Okay, and we test a bit of attention as well to see how they can pay attention and actually retain some memories. Okay, so there are different kinds of cognitive tests. Don't worry about it. Go through it. It will be done in a language that is it should be done, okay, in a language that is most familiar to the person getting tested. So if it's Hokkien, it should be done in Hokkien. Okay, if it's in Malay, it should be done in Malay as well. Okay, and it's done by trained individuals. And what we do to complete our assessment, we often do some blood tests to make sure that it's not a secondary cause, such as a vitamin deficiency or a hormonal imbalance, okay, or some of the illnesses, the infectious diseases that may cause similar syndromes. Okay, and then we might send the patient for a scan, okay, either a CT scan or MRI scan of the brain to look for other things that might be happening in the brain. And yeah, of course, the last one we cover is actually the clinical examination to look for other potential neurodegenerative conditions that might mimic dementia. And then we come to a diagnosis. And based on the diagnosis, why is it important? Because it helps us to also give the patient an idea about what the next 10 years, the next 20 years will actually entail. And will help the family to be able to cope and to be able to help the individual live very fulfilled lives in the next 10, 20, 30 years. Okay, so dementia, there are many causes. Okay, dementia being an umbrella term. Okay, so dementia is not just one disease. Okay, the most common is actually what we call Alzheimer's dementia or Alzheimer's disease. Okay, Alzheimer's disease is classically the one that affects the memory the most, okay? And it affects the short-term memory faster. Okay? And what do we mean by short-term memory? Oftentimes I like to ask, what do you have for lunch? And then sometimes they will make up a story, right? You look at the caregiver and the caregiver will be shaking the head. No, right? Okay, so for example, sometimes you introduce something right at the start of the consultation, and then after that we'll ask, oh, what did I share with you just now? And they won't be able to say. So this is a short-term memory, okay? But if you ask them what happened 30 years ago, 50 years ago, they will tell you to the detail, okay? Because that's in the long-term memory, okay? So that's what people with Alzheimer's dementia face. And it can be a bit frightening, because when you wake up in the morning, you basically do not know where you are, how you got there, okay? But you remember things that are a long time ago. Now, the second most common is actually what we call vascular dementia. And vascular dementia has got to do with the series of strokes to the brain, okay? If the blood flow to the brain is not adequate, we tend to get stroke, okay? And what happens when you get stroke? The brain gets damaged, and when the brain cells get damaged, they don't recover. Okay, and when you're a bit older, the reserve is less, right? And that affects different parts of your thinking ability. Okay, so as we have a lot of chronic diseases here in Singapore, and we age, vascular dementia is also on the rise. Okay, so first two, by far the most common. If you meet someone with dementia, it would be either Alzheimer's disease or it would be vascular dementia. Now, there are other less common causes of dementia, which I won't go into, okay? Those, leave it to the medical professionals. They would be able to diagnose some of the syndromes that would point more towards basically things like a Lewy body dementia, a frontotemporal dementia, or a Parkinson's-related dementia, or other forms of rarer dementias, okay? But for our audience here, most of the time you would find that the dementias are either Alzheimer's dementia or vascular dementia. Just referring back to our two dear presidents, Ronald Reagan probably had Alzheimer's. Okay, that's the thinking. And Margaret Thatcher probably had a form of a mixed dementia. That was a mix between vascular dementia to start off with, and then as she got older, it was more of the Alzheimer's form of dementia. And the difficulty with dementia really is that because of the what is happening in the brain, sometimes there can be a lot of behaviors that dementia patients exhibit that can be very challenging to deal with, okay, for a family member, for a family caregiver, or for any caregiver, okay, of this person. We like to try to analyze the situation to see what really is the root cause of some of these behaviors. Take, for example, if you think about anxiety, right? Of course, we are often anxious about different things in life. But if you have dementia and you keep forgetting, right, what you said, what somebody said, how you even got to that place, where you put something and then suddenly it's lost, right? It would invoke quite a lot of anxiety. Okay, so if we do think that anxiety is one of the key features causing the problems, then we will address that by putting the things at the correct places or the common places, or making the things look very big so that you can find it. Okay, putting old photos of familiar faces around to give them a sense of security and comfort, and then to reduce the anxiety symptom. Okay. Okay, so some of them would be anxious. They will keep asking the same question, ask a lot of questions, and ask the same question again and again. Some would get, especially if they have access to their keys, they will go out of the house and they wander around in community and not be able to find their way back home. Okay, so that presents a problem. A lot of them would activate the police, and the police will just shuttle them back home, and then another few months later they get lost again in the community. Okay, there's a lot of times. That's what we call sleep-wake reversal, where patients have problem sleeping in the nighttime, and as a result they sleep in the daytime, and as a result they cannot even more sleep in the nighttime. Okay, and the problem with this is that the family members also cannot sleep in the nighttime, and everyone gets very stressed. Okay, and in the nighttime when everything is very dark and you're supposed to be sleeping, things may happen, like you may trip over something, or you may start shouting and keeping all your neighbors awake and causing a nuisance of yourself. Okay, so that presents a source of stress as well. Hallucinations and delusions are fairly common as well. A lot of times they would say things that didn't happen, okay, or they would see things that didn't happen. Sometimes we find it's related to what they might have dreamt about, okay, because the difference between a dream and reality tends to get a little bit blurred in the moderate to severe stages of dementia. So you imagine you fall asleep, right, and you see all these wonderful things in your dream, and you wake up and you have forgotten actually that you actually fell asleep, right? And it takes so long to kind of orientate yourself again, right? They will say something happened, but actually it happened in the dream. Okay, so that we find might be some of the causes of delusions and hallucinations. And if you tell them it didn't happen, then that's where they will argue with you. They say it definitely did happen, and that's where a lot of times the conflict happens. Okay, depression happens a lot as well. Depression, Asian families, we tend to like it better than the agitation. Okay, so we tend to, especially the men, they will keep alone. They will keep to themselves, right? They will just stay in the room, do their own thing. They won't tell anybody, and they won't cause trouble for anybody. And we think it's very good, but actually they are suffering inside. Okay, they could actually have benefited from activities, okay, referral for various activities, socializations and all that. So depression is something we need to actively look out for. It is a problem. Just because they don't shout, they don't cause you problems, doesn't mean it's not a problem. Okay, especially we need to look out more for it as well. And of course you have the agitation. People want to use violence either through words or through physical violence. And to a caregiver, it's especially difficult, right? Because you are already putting in so much effort into caring for your loved one, and to get a response that is either a curse or a scolding, or to have to deal with violence is very hard to take, right? So that is also a cause of a lot of caregiver stress. So if that is already not depressing enough, remember I mentioned that we have actually run this crisis team, right? Yeah. So if the previous set of symptoms which we learn about, okay, in our medical school is not depressing enough, in Singapore there's a new set of symptoms that are what I term very challenging. Okay, even more challenging. And if you're ready for this, let me describe it to you, okay? So you come home from work and you find that your kitchen and your house is smeared with feces, right? Because they have actually soiled themselves, they don't know how to wipe, don't know what to wipe, and then they just wipe with anything that is convenient. So all your sofa, your walls are smeared with feces, okay? Or urine, right? You kind of lose continence, you don't know where to go, you don't know the way to the toilet, so you leak. Okay, so I've seen houses where the whole hall is full of urine and a mixture of a bit of feces on the wall, and it's very, very stressful. Okay, especially for people who are working, right? You come back home and then you have to kind of clean everything up again. It's terrible. Okay, it's very challenging. Okay, and burning pots. Okay, a lot of times families can tolerate a lot of things, but once the safety is affected, you turn on the stove and then you forget to turn it off, and then you burn the pot. Then that's actually dangerous. Okay, so we have, and they rightfully flag it up to the medical team, okay, for diagnosis. And then of course aggression and falls. Okay, so we have got a lot of patients who forget that they cannot walk properly, and then they stand up, they try to walk, and then they fall. And then how much can you actually look over somebody 24/7, right? It's very stressful, yeah? So these are, a lot of times our team was activated for these conditions, okay? These conditions, people sometimes still can tahan for a couple of years, okay? But these are very, very stressful, okay? So some questions that the doctors will ask would be, what are the symptoms that the patient faces? How long have you noticed that the symptoms were present? Okay, and this question people cannot answer. I think maybe 2 months, or was it 4 months? So how we try to anchor the patients would be, was it this year, 2024, or was it last year, 2023? Okay, then they get to orientate it a little bit more. Say, I think last year already showed some of the symptoms. Okay, so the question of how long is actually quite difficult, especially if you're not paying attention to some of the symptoms. Okay, any loss of function that is faced? Was it a sudden decline, or was it a gradual decline over a couple of months, a couple of years? Are there other medical problems involved that could point us to what the diagnosis is? Any other mental health symptoms that is faced both by the patient and the caregiver? And is there an ability to self-care, or the ability to self-care is completely lost? Okay, so these are good questions to note. Okay, so if you're facing something, it's one of your family members are facing problems, you want to go to a consultation, it'll be good to prepare some of these questions. Okay, we'll take a short pause. Okay, and I just wonder how many of you in the audience recognize or will react to this. Okay, this came from my childhood. Okay, so what is this screen? Where do you see this? On the TV, right? When we didn't have 24/7 TV. Okay, so we just take a pause. Maybe I can just take maybe 1 or 2 questions about what we have shared so far.
Yes. Okay. We see some questions on why the clock drawing test.
Okay.
Yeah, what's the purpose of the clock drawing test?
Okay, clock drawing. We love the clock drawing test. Okay, it is part of one of the screens for dementia. Okay, so what we generally tell the patients to do is to draw a clock, a traditional clock, not the analog clock, the traditional clock face. Okay, and then they are supposed to draw the clock. So they have to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, and that actually reflects some form of planning ability, right? Because the easiest way to do is to put 12, put 6, put 3, and then put 9, right? And then to fill in the blanks after that. But some of those with dementia are not able to plan that, so they will just start drawing, and then they will 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12 are all on one side. Okay, so that reflects some form of a planning. Spatial. Okay, so if you're not able to judge spaces anymore, then you're not able to kind of put them in the correct place, and then to kind of point the time. So there's a shorthand and there's a longhand, right? So the shorthand is supposed to be the hour, the longhand is supposed to be the minutes. So sometimes they get that a bit confused as well. So it's a nice screen. It's not as easy as we think it is. Okay, and then if they're unable to draw it, we look at it and we can analyze some things from it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, maybe we'll take one more question before we move on.
Anyone on the floor? Otherwise, I have another question.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Can antipsychotic drugs induce dementia symptoms?
Antipsychotic drugs induce dementia symptoms. It's a fairly specific question. So antipsychotic drugs are very particular kind of drugs that are used to treat psychosis. Okay, so psychosis actually it includes the symptoms of delusions. Okay, that means you have a very fixed belief at something that didn't happen, right? Or you have hallucinations. Okay, that means you're seeing things that are not there. So oftentimes, if you have these symptoms, you might be prescribed an antipsychotic. Okay, whatever the diagnosis is. But the current thinking is that it won't cause dementia, but the fact that you had some psychosis to start off with, that underlying condition may actually cause you to have, predispose you to have a higher risk of dementia. Okay, so currently we don't blame the antipsychotic drug, right? It's whatever is the underlying condition would already predispose you to having dementia. Okay, let me move on, and then we'll have another time of Q&A after that. So we move on to what can be done if you are diagnosed with dementia, and then I'll end off with what can be done now to prevent. Okay? So if one is diagnosed with dementia, how do we look at it? Is medicine a cure-all? No. Okay, medicine is just 1/3 of the solution. Okay? Because a lot of the problems that dementia patients face are not just in terms of whether they can remember or not. It's very social as well. Therefore, we help the patients with behavioral methods of dealing with some of the challenging behaviors, and we have to support the caregivers. Okay, because caregivers are often very stressed out. And that's where they appear to us as a healthcare team. If they're not stressed, they won't come. Okay, so I like this photo. By the way, the images are taken off the web. Okay, so I don't have the copyright. I'm sharing it in this audience for the good of everybody. Okay, not for any personal good. So I love this slide because it shows you really what the burden of dementia is. When the patients come in, actually there's not just one patient, it's actually 2 patients, sometimes 3 patients. Okay, because we have to include the caregivers in the discussion as well. Okay, we have to care for the caregivers. Presumably the man has dementia. Presumably the lady is the caregiver. And look at her, she's so stressed. Right? So we have to really see it as as a whole. Right? We have to not just focus on what are the symptoms, what are the things you face, but we look at the whole family or the whole caregiving unit as a whole. Now, I like this concept. It's very applicable in our Singapore society. It's called the caregiving sandwich. Okay, so this is the classic caregiving sandwich where the working adults are squashed in between the children that couldn't care less, right? I mean, look at children nowadays. I mean, seriously, right? Okay, and they are squashed within the needs of taking care of their children, and they are elderly parents, right? So it is very stressful. So that's why I call it caregiving sandwich, right? Nowadays, I see it more like the American sandwich, okay, where it's just not just three layers. It's not just the sandwich, then the meat, and then the sandwich. It's multiple layers. Because how many generations do we have? My grandmother is 102 years old. My father is coming to 80 years old. Maybe not yet. So coming to 80 years old, right? I'm 40, right? And then my kid, right, is on the way, and then potentially, right, my kid could have a kid too, right? So there's actually really multiple generations, and what we find is that everyone needs to work in Singapore, right? In order to make ends meet and pay off your loans and everything. So what happens is that if all is well, it's fine, right? We can still survive. But it just takes one person or 2 people in the whole family to have issues, and then the whole situation breaks down. Okay, it could be dementia, it could be illnesses, it could be special needs. Okay, it could be children with some developmental issues, and then the whole thing breaks down. Okay, and therefore we also in Singapore we have a huge caregiving debt. Okay, we have a huge caregiving debt, and because of that, we have our nursing homes, right? Because of that, we have our foreign domestic helpers. Because of that, we need to have people to come in to help us do the caregiving. Okay, so that's what we are facing in our society. It will get worse and worse. Okay, so we need to prepare ourselves for it. Yeah. So caregiving sandwich, caregiving Big Mac. Okay. There are some good online resources that I would like to share. Okay. Yeah, so you could take a photo of this, or the slides would actually be made available, I think, to your church community as well. So there are a lot of good resources that are available. If you just want to look for one website, you can go to Dementia Hub. Okay, because from Dementia Hub, it has all the other links to all the other websites as well. So that's supposed to be the one-stop resource. Okay, if you're looking at caregiving resources, then the AIC website is actually a good site to go to. They will actually point you to various schemes, both financial as well as caregiving schemes that the government has put in place to support people with caregiving needs for dementia. Forget Us Not has done a lot of very good videos. Okay, it was done really championed by the Khoo Teck Puat Hospital team, and they have done a lot of videos about understanding dementia, and a lot of them are very touching. Facebook. Okay, so Project We Forgot is a very good resource, and they use social media, okay, to share about their stories, not just from Singapore, but from all over the world now. Okay, it was set up by a Singaporean. Okay, but now it has become an international website. Okay, and of course you have the Dementia Singapore website with a lot of very clear videos on dementia as well. And we encourage everyone to plan for the future. Okay, so how do we plan for the future? Where will you go for your medical appointments? How far you want to travel? Travel to the hospital close to your house or travel to the hospital far away? Okay. What are the community resources to get? What are your housing arrangements? Okay, we do have a lot of Singaporeans that stay in landed houses that are very far away from community services. And what can we do, right? Do we encourage them to downsize, okay, maybe to a flat that gives them a lot of access, right, to a lot of the community services? Do your advanced care planning, lasting power of attorney, plan your will, and life will be a lot more peaceful. Okay, I'm going to just end off with this segment, okay, about what can we do now to prevent dementia. And I just have 2 slides on this. Okay, it's very simple. Okay, first is to stay active. Okay, so the very fact that I've kept you in your seats for coming to 40 minutes is actually not a good thing. You need to be physically active, right? So if we can, stand up, jump around, yeah. Yeah, you can all stand up now. If you, okay, feel free to stand up, do stretching. Okay, in the talks that I give, I like to give people the freedom, right, to go to the back, do some exercises, because sitting is very bad. Okay, sitting is really very bad. Okay, so keep active, learn a sport. Do you know what's the most popular sport now among seniors in Singapore? Pickleball, that's right. Okay, there are so many pickleball clubs. I'm amazed. And if your local community center is under renovation and you can't continue the pickleball, a lot of the seniors will go and find other community clubs. They will travel to Sengkang, they will travel to Boon Lay just to play pickleball. I'm amazed. Right, pickleball is the next big thing. Okay, it's actually quite fun. I've played it before. Okay, stay active mentally. Learn something new. Learn something new. Okay, every day learn something new. 4D. Okay, remember certain numbers, but don't put it on your phone. Try to remember the number that you. Okay, now I'm not advocating that. Okay, yeah. The latest activity that is also a big hit among seniors is this. Do you know how to play it? No, this is not mahjong. Okay. Rumi Cup or Rummy Cup. I stay in Bukit Batok. My flat, downstairs my flat, once COVID was lifted, there's a group of white-haired ladies that meet every day at the void deck to play this. I wonder whether they're gambling. But it's really adorable. They play every day and then they talk about life and all that. Okay, but learn something new, keep up with the news, learn a new hobby, use your skills future. Okay, yeah. Learn something new. And keep connected socially. Right? So social connection is very important. Okay, this is something that we don't do very well in today's world. Okay, so take time off, connect with your friends, okay, meet people up for a talk, a catch up, a drink. gather together, Christmas party, okay, New Year party, all of that, very, very important. Okay, it keeps us going. Okay, so keep connected. Join a local group, join an interest group, okay, join a community group, a fellowship group, a cell group or things like that as well. Okay, so first slide, keep active physically, mentally, and socially. Okay, in the village, they have got no problems doing this. Only in the city, we have got problems with this. Okay, and control what we call the 3 highs. We find that there's so much correlation between the blood flow to the brain and whether you get dementia or not. Whether it's Alzheimer's dementia or whether it's vascular dementia, there's a lot of correlation because it makes sense. When the blood flows to the brain, it gives the oxygen, the nutrients to the brain, then the brain can function, right? If there's limitation of blood flow, or blood vessels are all clogged up, then the blood cannot flow, the brain doesn't get oxygen, and then it doesn't do so well. Okay, so if you have diabetes, control it well. If you have hypertension, control it well. If you have high cholesterol, control it well. Don't smoke, drink in moderation, and keep active. Okay, let's read this together. Okay, 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 19 and 20. Ready? Let's go. What know ye not, that the body is the temple of the Holy Ghost, which is in you, which ye have of God, and ye are not your own? For ye are bought with a price. Therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's. Okay, so as a believer, we need to be a good steward of the body and the life that is given to us. This verse, of course, is written in the context of sexual immorality. So that's also very important, okay, because things like HIV and the sexually transmitted diseases also cause dementia. Okay, but not only that, earlier on in the chapter, there's a quote about food. Okay, food for the body, body for the food. So we can eat anything we want. But it's not true. Okay, the problem that we face in today's world is food. Because we eat too much food. Okay, we eat too much processed food. A lot of the food is really not very good food. So watch what we eat as well. Okay, and that will go a long way to preventing the dementia. So back to our 2 friends here. They live very fulfilled lives. Okay, they live very active lives. Some people might say, so intelligent still can get dementia. What's the hope for me, right? But if we reverse it around, right, we say that the thinking is that if they weren't the president and keep being active even after their presidency, they might have faced dementia early on in life. Okay, one lived until 93, one lived until 87. They were still writing letters. They were still writing, arguments against certain things that were happening, even after their presidency. They keep active, right? And then you can go a long way. And what do we remember them for? Not for their dementia, right? Their life, their legacy still remains, and they live good lives. So the 3 things that people tend to worry about nowadays, I think Pastor mentioned it just now, cancer, dementia, and dialysis. Cancer, dementia, dialysis. Okay. In a way, it can be prevented. I think it's good that your church has this series to understand more about it and things that we can do to prevent it or reduce the chance that we might get it. Okay, so I think it's very good. I'd just like to end off with this video. It's one of my favorites.
She was diagnosed with dementia and Alzheimer's 8 years ago, but in Florence Vigod's golden years, she has been a gift to those around her and a true testament to the magical power of music.
You get to the front. And back.
Almost a lifetime of Florence Vigod's memories have disappeared.
Do you remember who your sisters are?
Yeah.
Who? Sadie and Molly.
That's right.
But her eyes are still bright, and so is her smile.
She always had that sense of humor, like for all our lives.
She walks without a cane and doesn't take any medication. But at 102 years old,
Her short-term memory is about 3 or 4 seconds.
What are we waiting for? Well, you're waiting for me to finish combing your hair.
Florence has dementia and Alzheimer's.
I think you're ready to go. Do you want to come?
Where?
To the piano.
She moved into this care home about 3 years ago.
It was as though you had uncovered a pot of gold.
And that's when everything changed here.
Everybody can sing along with you.
Florence has been playing the piano since she was 6 years old. And she remembers. Every morning she plays O Canada, and everybody stands. Some even sing. Sometimes they even dance.
Even people that are pretty well non-responsive or non-verbal will smile, will get up and will want to move.
Her eyesight isn't great, so she can no longer read the notes. She plays everything by memory and by request.
Can you play Take Me Out to the Ball Game?
I think so.
Yeah? Let's hear it.
I call it a treat, but usually a treat you don't have every day for so much time, and so it's a privilege.
I move to it, or I get up and dance with it. It depends on the music.
Does the music make you happy?
Yes.
In November, Florence turns 103. The plan?
Coffee and cookies and cake.
And music. There will definitely be music.
Yeah, okay, so she's 103. I think she lived under 104. I think she passed away about 2 years ago. But it's such a great video, right, about living fully all the way to the end. And I think we all are given talents, we all have our life stories. This is where we come forward and we use it, right? Not just for ourselves, but also she's using it to bless all the other people at the care home. It's so inspiring, right? Yeah, okay, we will pause for a couple of questions, and like I said, I'll try to answer some of it today. But if I can't, or if we can't address all of it, come back for part 2. Okay?
Since you've been sitting for so long, can we all stand up first? Stretch a bit, yeah, relax a little bit. Okay? Yeah. Okay, and then please take a seat. All right. Okay, anyone have question that you'd like to ask? We can pass a mic. If not, you can just shout it from where you are. I think we can hear you. Yes, Sharon.
What's the difference between short-term memory loss and early dementia?
Short-term memory loss and...
is short-term memory a sign of early dementia?
Okay. So thanks for the question.
Will it lead to, it will lead to further dementia?
Okay, that's a very good question. Thanks for that. So short-term memory loss is something that many people face. Even I face it. Okay, I can't remember what happened. Okay, so but especially in the age groups of about maybe 60, 70, then people do find that they have a little bit more of short-term memory loss, and then they get concerned, and then they come actually to see a doctor, and then we have to do the whole, then we investigate it fully, right? So there is an entity called either subjective cognitive impairment, we call it SCI, okay, where people just feel that they're more forgetful, okay? Or what we call mild cognitive impairment, where there's actually a little bit more forgetfulness, but otherwise you're still very, very functional, okay? And not all the time you actually progress to dementia, okay? So not all of the SCI, not all of the MCI actually progresses to dementia. So that's the medical part of it, okay? And some people actually, after they start exercising, after they start eating well, socializing, they actually reverse, okay, their MCI. That means they start to get very orientated again. Okay, but what I find that is quite helpful sometimes, okay, where someone comes in and says, doctor, I think I might have dementia, okay. Sometimes we help the patient be able to understand some of the factors that might affect either memory or attention. Okay, because if you think about it, memory, in order to create a memory, you need to have paid attention to it in the first place, right? We have walked past many people on our way to here today, but we don't remember most of them. Okay, in the train, in the public space, it's because we didn't pay attention to them, right? We have forgotten them, right? So if you have not paid attention to something, then chances are you may forget it, and it's not that you have dementia. It's just that you didn't even retain that memory in the first place. And in today's world, what's the problem that we have? Phones, right? Okay. Yeah, so our minds are actually in many places at the same time. Right now, some people are thinking about lunch, going for somewhere, the different things, what my kids are going to do. So because in order to create that memory, we do need to pay attention, right? So what I find that is helpful nowadays is actually to get people to do one thing at a time, right? To be fully present where you are. And we go into things like mindfulness, we go into things like slowing down, okay? And then you have a better sense of well-being. You find that your memory gets better, right? So that's the first thing. Second thing is, second pro tip, second good piece of advice is sleep. So many of us are not sleeping enough, or our sleep quality is not good enough. And when that happens, if you are sleep deprived, it does affect the quality of our memory, okay? Well, the third thing that's very closely related is exercise. So you find that once people start exercising again, somehow their memory gets a lot better immediately. Okay, so if you haven't been exercising for some time, try to get your heart pumping. Okay, try to get your heart rate up. Do some exercise, at least to a moderate, vigorous activity level. Yeah, and you'll find that suddenly you are very alert and you can remember a lot of things. Okay, so yeah, thanks for that.
I'm sorry, before you go on, I just want to emphasize, if you don't pay attention in a sermon, that's why you don't retain anything, right? Very important. Sometimes I shout at you all to wake you all up, and make sure that you pay attention, okay? Don't fall asleep, yeah? Very, very important, yeah. Then the other thing that you said was, what's the last thing? Oh, stay active, right?
Yeah.
Activities, join us for our walks. That is why I organize the walks for our church. Not just, but of course, the time of fellowship, social as well, social activity to get connected again with one another, right? Get you out of the house. You're not in front of your computers, all the time, or buried with your own problems. Huh? Just come out and walk with us and talk with us, and make friends with one another. Okay, right? We are a community, right? People of God, right? Yes, you have a question, David.
How about some of the long-term medication we take for our chronic disease, like hypertension? Does it affect? One thing. Second thing, how about I don't know, this is quite sensitive, those vaccination for the COVID?
Okay, so the first question, so the medicines that we take on the long term, it actually helps to control our chronic diseases, and it's very important to control it. Because what happens if that you don't control your tree highs well, your blood vessels get thickened, and then it gets clogged up with cholesterol plaques. And then what happens is that then the blood flow cannot flow through. So actually a lot of the medicines are actually helpful. If they're not helpful, the doctors are not supposed to be giving it to you. Okay, not supposed. And Singapore is quite well regulated. In fact, some of the medicines are so good that, especially the cholesterol medicine, it actually helps to open up the blood vessels. There's some properties that actually help to open up the blood vessels or to stabilize some of the cholesterol plaques that are already inherently there. So the advice is actually, we take just enough for you to control it well. Don't overtake, of course, medicines. But if you need to take the medicine, take it regularly. We've got some patients with high blood pressure that, when they feel angry, then they take the blood pressure medicine. Then when they feel like, they feel well, they don't take the blood pressure. But sometimes that achieves an opposite effect because your blood pressure then swings up and down and up and down, and actually that thickens the wall potentially even more. So we sometimes, yeah, it's worse actually to take medicine sometimes, not take medicine sometimes. Rather, it's better to just take it regularly. Yeah. Okay, the second question, there's official and unofficial. Yeah, so of course, every vaccination will have side effects, yeah, potential side effects, and there are potential benefits also lah. So I think that one is always a balance, right, between the potential side effects. I mean, COVID was very scary, right? A lot of people would have passed on, okay, if not for the vaccinations. So there's that time, and then now living in 2025 or 2024, going to 2025, we should kind of assess it along the way as well. Yeah. So nothing official on the side effects front. Yeah. Although we do hear some people get some cardiovascular events as well. Okay, but the amount of cardiovascular events is so much less compared to the amount of people that were dying from COVID. So it's really was beneficial. Yeah.
Yes, question.
Dr. Linus Chua, should we be concerned also with young onset dementia?
Okay, yeah. So thanks for asking that. So young onset dementia generally, definitions shift over time, but generally we still take it as less than 55 years old. So those that start to exhibit some of the symptoms even below the age of 55 years old. Okay, the answer is that it should get checked up. Okay, about what could be the cause. Okay, is it a disease? Is it a hormonal problem? Is it a lack of vitamins? Okay, is it some other causes that might actually cause you to display the symptoms? And a lot of this young onset will be in the realm of a specialist. So the specialist will be the one actually following up. He'll do detailed scans. They may even take a sample from the spinal cord, to look for various markers to understand more about this young onset dementia. It is not common in Singapore. Okay, in other countries there are sizable numbers of people with young onset dementia, but not so common in Singapore. Associated to that is also genetics, right? Some people say, okay, my family, everyone got dementia. Will I get dementia? Okay, that thankfully is not as common in Singapore. Okay, in some countries, in some families in the world, there's actually quite strong genetic element of the dementia. But in Singapore, we don't find so many of those families. Yeah.
I think Dr. Linus Chua, is gardening a good way to reduce dementia?
Yes, it is. Okay, but gardening, we would probably say try to keep active as well. My grandmother used to sit down for a lot of hours just doing weeding. Just weeding the grass, which is not a very good thing to do, right? Because you need to weed every day, and she sits down she squats all of the time, so that limits the blood flow. But generally, keeping a good garden is a very healthy activity. Yeah. Keeps us going. We have got gardening groups. We can go and plant new things. We see the growth. It's a very, very good activity. Yeah.
My name is Desmond. Actually, my family. We have taken care of I have two parents. One is my mother-in-law, one is my dad. And then I've been through as a caregiver and along with my wife, taking care of these two parents. But initially, when they have dementia, it's easier to take care. As long as we have the time to spare and we give them more love, this time we can make compromises and we balance out and be able to take care of them. And they feel confident and being loved. But the problem that we face is that at the advanced stage, we are totally lost, mentally and psychologically. Because when at the advanced stage, they are being prescribed very high dose of these dementia tablets, these drugs. So every time from the first drugs, and when they switch to a second drug, for example, with 5 mg, they switch to 10 mg, 20 mg. At every switch, there will be great tremendous change in this dementia person. He become more agitated and lost control. And precisely because of this change of medicine, the problem of risk of fall even greater. So when they switch to medicine, as a caregiver, we have to be very aware and this gives stress. And the advanced stage is very hard to take care because when they switch to medicine, they're totally a changed person. And like you say, the clock reverse. When we sleep in the night, they are active the night 24 hours. At one stage, 365 days don't need to sleep. 24 hours awake. So how do the doctor resolve to this problem is giving heavy dose of sleeping pills. And sleeping pills, when you give him one, it only contain them for a few hours. And then, as we have to juggle between work and our family. So, we recommended 2 doses of this sleeping pill. And when we give them the doses, they sleep for 3 days without awake. Can't eat, can't drink. So for us, the caregivers, is this person already dead? Until that day later, when we call them, they awake. So the taking care of the partner is the advanced stage. The beginning stage is not a problem. The advanced stage is the one that stress this person to suffer dementia. How can we cope? Even when we send our parents to the nursing home, they have the same problem. And they also giving them the heavy dose of drugs. So this is the problem that we face right now, at this moment. Are we going to cope with it? As a caregiver. That's why we send our parents to the nursing home, not because we want to push away our responsibility. Being son, I really don't know what to do really. This is the problem we face.
Thanks so much for sharing, Desmond. I think it's very, you describe it very, very clearly, right? The whole journey and all that, and truly it is challenging, right? So truly the caregiver burnout, caregiver stress is real, okay? And then it's not just for now, it's been months, it's been years, and then each time is a different thing that you have to deal with. So it is very challenging. In my next talk, I will cover some of the strategies, but truly it can only be certain strategies, right? Each individual story is also different, right? So each situation is very unique, and what we hope to do right? If you look at it holistically, it's also to get the whole context of the family, to take it into context, and then to see how we can help holistically, not just by giving medicine. So hopefully, not everything is just increase the medicine. That shouldn't be the aim. But thanks for sharing, Desmond.
Okay, I've got 2 questions that have come in. One is, we rely heavily on technology and automation today in contrast to the older generations who are used to manual tasks and little to no screen time. Is it true to say that the reliance on technology will make the next few generations, the younger ones, more prone to neurodegenerative diseases and lead to the earlier onset of such conditions like dementia? Is that true? Is there a link between technology use?
So we don't know because it's multifactorial. There are different factors involved, right? For an outcome, do we say that it's due to technology? Do we say it's due to the processed food? Do we say it's due to the inactivity? So it's not. I think we don't know enough. But suffice to say, I do want to also share that. We do need to watch the trend of this, how do you call it, the reliance on relating to the robots, relating to a computer, because it's a very real thing among our young people, and it will continue to evolve, right? People live no longer in physical space, but in online space. So we do need to watch that trend. We already know that social media, right, is now associated with poor mental health. Now all across the world, people are recognizing that. And in Australia, they are banning the social media below a certain age and all that. So I think those are certain things that we have found out, and then we are actually doing something about it. So moving forward in the future, there will be more and more of these situations that we have to deal with. I mean, robots, right? So if you have a robot and you interact with the robot, now you can interact with a lot of robots. Is it good, right? If they can teach you to exercise, is it good? May not be a bad thing, So then, what does, when we say keep physically active, keep mentally active, keep socially active, does it apply? Am I being socially active with a robot? So those are questions that it's very hard to answer now, but I think we should keep alert to some of these trends. Yeah.
Okay. There is a question that is kind of similar to what Desmond asked just now, that somebody is asking that the family member who has dementia is currently on melatonin now. Initially, he's able to sleep longer, but now he's not, and he keeps on waking up. So should he continue to take, because the tablet is very costly?
Okay. Well, it's probably need to look at the specific situation, but generally, actually, medications are meant to help with the symptom. So if you find that it doesn't help so much with the symptom, it's good to go back to the healthcare professional to review whether there are other options that might be helpful. Yes?
If the medication is showing more harm than good, should we stop it?
Okay, so we probably need to look into that specific situation. Generally, a lot of the dementia medicine, especially if it's for behavior control, generally it can be adjusted. But for example, the key is that we don't know whether if we suddenly stop the medicine, whether the behavior will even more go out of control. So that's the situation that we have to discuss with the individual family members. But generally, it is all not compulsory, if you get what I mean. Right? They are there meant to control the situation to make it better so that the family can care better for the family member. So it's usually not 100% compulsory. Usually.
At the end of the day, the family knows the patient better
Yes.
than the doctors.
Yes.
So they know what is best for the patient.
Yes.
My husband used to have diabetes. He had high cholesterol. But then he was taking all this metformin and all this vastatin for high cholesterol and also for diabetes for many years, more than 30 years. But then, he just keeps sleeping and sleeping and sleeping. So, I argued with the doctor because the doctor said that if we take him off the cholesterol medicines, he will have a stroke. And I said, I'll deal with a stroke later. It's a probability. But right now, the way I see it, if he continues to take this medicine, he will just die because he is inactive all the time. Most of the time he's sleeping. So I took him off and we managed his diet. So now it's not so bad.
Okay.
He eats well. He doesn't have any medication. I manage his diet. So he's okay.
Okay, that's excellent.
Maybe because this is not so bad. He doesn't show signs of aggressiveness. He sleeps well, he eats well. So it's manageable. And I think if you show a lot of love and support to the patient, it will be the best for them.
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah.
So for others who are having, families who are starting to have onset of dementia, I really suggest that if you can do it, manage it yourself and don't send them to the homes because they will get worse. And you see, if you give them like sleeping pills, they will be heavily reliant to that. They will keep increasing the dosage and dosage and dosage. It will not take effect.
Yeah.
So many patients.
Yeah, so I am a strong advocate of this. Okay, so medicines are just, and these are three pillars. Okay, so how we manage dementia, I'm a strong advocate that medications is just 1/3 of the solution. Right? What we do for behavioral management, love the patient, be able to get him in more natural ways to be better, to be more active and things like that is very important. And of course, support the caregiver is also very important. Right? So I think this is a good framework that I like to share so that we are not heavily reliant on the medications. So thanks for sharing that.
Thank you very much. And it's just this final question has just come in. Dr. Chua, is there a link between dementia and antihistamines?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of. But antihistamines is the medicine that you take for the runny nose and the itch. Yeah. So the older generation one tends to get you to be a bit drowsy. And that can trigger some in the elderly, it can trigger some confused behavior. So do be a bit careful when you give it to the elderly patients. Yeah.
All right. So with that, join me in giving thanks to Dr. Chua for the very enlightening talk, very educational. So I think we have learned quite a lot today. And the good news is that it's preventable, right? So encourage all of us to take good care of our own health. Let us have a word of prayer. Father, we give you thanks even for this day and how you have guided us and taught us many things through Dr. Chua, and we pray that you will help us to take responsibility for our own health and our own lives and also our families' lives, to keep socially, spiritually also active, and to walk with you all the days of our life, to take responsibility for our own health. And we pray that you will also now dismiss us with your blessings and grant us peace and safety as we go our separate ways home. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Right.